Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Way I See It. I'm recording in the middle of the afternoon right now. There's light coming in my window, so the lighting is suddenly much better. Maybe I could manage this every time, but I don't know. It would depend on doing it when the kids are back at school in person if they get there. And this is kind of a risk right now anyway, because it's the middle of the day. Everybody's at home. Lydia's at school in her room right now, and the other two kids are downstairs. They're done with school, so they're playing video games and whatnot. Brandon is in his office. So I may make it through this video without incident, or I may not. We'll see. So today I'm going to talk about cultural Christianity and whether or not I think that exists, and if it does exist, what it looks like. Most often, cultural Christianity gets compared to Judaism and Islam. I'm not sure why. I guess because maybe Hinduism, it could also be compared to Hinduism. Certain religions like Buddhism, you don't really have cultural cachet maybe, or maybe, people who are practicing Buddhists don't necessarily raise their kids to be practicing Buddhists, and so kids don't grow up thinking, well, I'm culturally Buddhist, but not really a practice. I'm not sure about that. But I know in Hinduism, there's a whole culture that's established because of the Hindu religion. And with Islam and Judaism and Christianity, there are also cultural aspects that are kind of put into place because of the religion. Now, I just want to preface this by saying that Islam is also called an Abrahamic religion like Judaism and Christianity because it claims to have come from Abraham by way of Ishmael. And I would be interested to hear from someone who knows whether this is the case or not. Is that establishment through Ishmael based on just tradition, or is there actual historical lineage, genealogy written somewhere? Like for the Jews, they traced this person had this person, and he had this child, and he had these sons, and they had all these children. And some Jews today, from what I can tell, can actually trace their lineage all the way back to Abraham, I suppose, at least back to probably David. So I would be interested to know if it's really an Abrahamic religion, if there's someone who can say, yes, we have followed the lineage of Ishmael, and it came to Muhammad, and then because of that, Muhammad... But even if that were the case, Muhammad did not establish Islam as a familial covenantal religion, whereas Judaism, and out of that Christianity, are established as covenantal religions. Let me explain what that means. In Judaism, God told Abraham, I'm going to make your name great. You're going to have all these descendants. They're going to be this nation, this great nation. And then through that, he actually talked about how he's going to bless the nations. But I don't think there's any sort of record of Allah promising Ishmael some sort of covenant regarding his descendants. Muslims today, I've not heard that they claim to all be from that bloodline. They just are people who adhere to the precepts set down by Muhammad. It's a different kind of setup to the composition of the people in the religion and the way that they are inducted into the religion. Christianity comes out of Judaism. It sets itself up as a completion of Judaism by way of the covenant of Abraham and the belief that it wasn't just intended for his actual physical descendants, but for people who believed as he did, including folks who were physically descended from him, as well as people who were brought in because of belief in the Messiah. And with Hinduism, it's not Abrahamic, so it's a completely different ballgame too. I believe that Hinduism is just established as people who practice these certain things and worship these certain gods and have this certain set of beliefs. I have a friend who grew up Hindu, and I guess, I don't know if she's practicing Hindu now. I would like her to weigh in. That would be fantastic. Give me a comment. Share this with people you know who are Muslim or Hindu, and have them weigh in. Have them tell me, give me some feedback in that area. Just like that, it's nighttime. I don't know if you can tell, but the lighting has changed. I was in the middle of the previous section of the video, and then my daughter came in because, as I said at the beginning, I didn't know what was going to happen. She actually had to come in and do some of her schoolwork on the desktop computer, which is where I'm filming this. So now it's 5 hours later, and I'm going to continue on. So going back to the idea of covenants and membership in the group that believes in the specific religion. In the case of Islam, they use certain terms. This is always the case in religions. You might see certain terms used that are the same, but they don't necessarily mean the same thing. So in Islam, there's like this idea of covenants, but it's always like so-and-so promised, well, Muhammad, basically, because everything in the Quran comes from Muhammad. Like, there's nothing in the Quran that is just historical narrative. Like, the whole thing is didactic in nature. But the belief is that Muhammad made a covenant with God, and so he promised God something, and that he would do this. He swore loyalty, and he would teach these teachings. Whereas covenants in the Bible don't necessarily mean that. For example, the very first covenant that God made with Abraham, not the very first one in the Bible, but the first one among the Hebrew people, God made that covenant. Like, Abraham didn't make that covenant. Like, God said to Abraham, this is what's going to happen, and then he put Abraham to sleep while he carried out the procedures of the covenant with the Abraham had cut the animals and laid them out and set everything up. And then it says God put him into a deep sleep, and then God walked through the animals and did all that. So it means something different. I mean, it's being enacted by God rather than the human saying, you know, I have to do this. And now it's in the Mosaic covenant where the Israelites are all saying, we're going to do this, and if we don't do it, then you can punish us. And sure enough, they get punished. They end up not being loyal to God, and he allows them to be punished severely. But at no point is it them being cut off from him. He's always swearing that he's going to be faithful no matter what, because preceding the Mosaic covenant is the Abrahamic covenant. So he's like, no matter what happens in the Mosaic covenant, when you're doing good, I'm going to bless you, and when you're doing bad, I'm going to bring punishment on you, but I'm always going to hold a faithful relationship with you because of what I swore to Abraham. So already in the Jewish religion, you have people who believe that because they're descended from Abraham through Isaac, that they are part of that covenant of God's faithfulness, that his whole sending of the Messiah was an example of him expressing his own righteousness, him honoring his covenant to Abraham. So now getting to cultural Christianity, or cultural anything. So from what I understand, Muslims and Hindus have certain cultural aspects that have been set up because of their religion that people who may not really adhere to the religious side may still adhere to the customs, like eating or not eating certain foods, wearing or not wearing certain clothes, treating certain days as special, taking certain holidays or whatever, doing certain symbolic gestures when you go into or out of certain buildings. Judaism has that aspect as well. Then there's also the added aspect of someone saying, well, I'm born Jewish, even if I don't practice Judaism. So you may have someone who says, I'm a Jew, and they're talking about their bloodline, but they really aren't even a cultural Jew because they may celebrate Christmas and eat non-kosher food. So that's, you know, that takes it a different way. And then you have Christians. Now, with Christianity, I want to say, first of all, I don't really believe that there is such a thing as a cultural Christian, because a Christian is one by belief. Just as you could say, really, some Muslims may say there's not such a thing as a cultural Muslim, because a Muslim is one by belief. And if someone's not actually believing the tenets of Islam and not actually trying to please Allah, and they're just living within these certain cultural mores, again, I'm not Muslim, but hardcore Muslims may say that person's not really a Muslim. That's what I say. You're not actually a Christian if you don't believe in Jesus as the Son of God, believe that he rose from the dead, and you have not committed your life to living in obedience to him. You have not accepted his sacrifice to bring you into a right relationship with God, to bring you into the covenant family of Abraham, and to give you that status as a member of this covenant group, and therefore live your life in that, under that sort of umbrella. If you don't do that, you're not a Christian. So what does cultural Christianity look like? Well, again, it might, if Christianity had certain mores, like you have to eat or not eat these foods, or you shouldn't drink alcohol. I mean, Christians are all over the map when it comes to whether or not you should drink alcohol, or how much, or what kinds, or just do it in secret. Don't let the pastor know you drink alcohol. But I don't really see that Christianity has those certain mores. I guess you could say, well, some people grow up just saying the blessing before their meal, and they just say the blessing, and it's almost like a superstition, and they don't really do it out of a true gratitude to God or a true relationship, with Jesus Christ. So maybe that's an example of cultural Christianity. Most people these days don't go to church unless they're actually believers, or the children of believers, and their believing parents are taking them because their believing parents are raising them to be believers. You don't have a whole lot of folks who just go to church for the social aspect. I mean, well, again, I guess it depends on what denomination you're in. I guess there's plenty of denominations where people go and they're just going because they like the music, or they like to be with certain people, and they have this group, this social net. I guess I see two sides to the cultural Christianity, the culture and the Christianity. You can have some who claim to be Christians, but they don't really hold any of the trappings of, say, evangelicalism, or things you would traditionally think Christians should do or should adhere to. And then you've got others who will adhere to these strict legalistic rules, but they don't really understand gospel or the message of Christ. And then you got people like me who are, I wouldn't even say we're in the middle. I would say we're like somewhere up here. I'm trying to do this with the camera. It's like you got this, and you got these people over here. Or maybe we're somewhere completely in a different place, where I believe that it's not about obeying the rules to earn God's favor, but there is an element of obedience to show that you submit to the lordship of Jesus Christ in your life, and you truly love those around you, and you go to church because you enjoy being with the family of God. So for those kind of people, for me, it's not just about cultural mandates. It's about having an entire worldview that is colored, or a filter that I see the world through, and that filter is the Bible is reality, and how does it set up how I see reality around me, and how I feel called to live my life. So that's completely different than people who maybe just go to church but don't really read the Bible or try to obey the rules, and then people over here who just try to obey a bunch of rules, also don't read the Bible, and don't really go to church. So you've got people, those could be two different kinds of cultural Christianity, but I don't think either one of them is the way. So I guess that's my take. Cultural Christianity can consist of these things, but in reality, a true Christian is going to say, those are like the cultural trappings of Christianity, but that's not actually Christianity. So that's kind of my take on it. I was doing this video in response to my friend John Fisher. I'll put a link to his channel down below in case you're interested. He does book review type stuff. But he was making a comment about it online, and I was like, I have this thing. I have these views about cultural Christianity, and I'll just do a video on them, because it's more than just saying that it does or does not exist. So anyway, weigh in. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you see it, and how you've been raised, what you believe about cultural, religious trappings. Do they have benefit in our society if people don't truly believe the religious tenets behind those trappings. Something to discuss. Please like, please subscribe, please comment, and share. Thank you so much.